Hello, DES. I think we'll go ahead and get started right at 1 o'clock. I do see about 200 participants logged in and more still coming. Hi, everyone. Happy New Year, DES. I'm super excited about 2022. I hope you are too. We have a pretty packed agenda this afternoon. So I'm going to try to just keep things moving along. There's still a lot of people logging in, but in the interest and respect for everyone's time, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to hand it over to Brooke Sutherland, as you may know, our employee communications manager. So she can give you some of the details about how today's meeting is going to work.
Thank you, Tara. Yes, my name is Brooke Sutherland. As Tara mentioned, I'm the Employee Communications Manager for DES. And so I'm going to just guide us through some of our agenda today. On our agenda, that'll include some agency announcements, some employee kudos, a conversation with human resources and workforce support and development about inclusion today. And then we'll finish up with a Q&A session featuring our leadership team. So before we get started, I want to go over just a couple of instructional pieces. We're holding the meeting today in Zoom webinar. And if you're not familiar with the webinar format in Zoom, you may notice a few differences from your regular Zoom meetings. First of all, you'll not be able to see your video or the video of the other attendees, which will allow us to fully concentrate on the speaker during the session. We have closed captioning available for today's webinar. You just need to click the CC button at the bottom of your screen to enable that feature. Also, you'll see that the chat feature is open today, and you can use that to comment or offer support for your colleagues who will be joining us on the screen. However, if you have a question for the Q&A section, please use the Q&A feature to submit your questions. And we do have some time reserved at the end to get to as many of those as we can. Today's meeting, as you may have heard when you came in, is being recorded, so it can be viewed by other employees later on who aren't able to join us today live, and we'll send that link out at a later time. And then finally, I just want to do a quick shout out and a thank you to my team members in communications who are helping us with the technology and the tech support for today's meeting. We have added a few things since the last all staff meeting, so be aware that there may be some technical lag today as we move people on and off screen, and we appreciate your patience and your understanding. And so with that, we'll go ahead and get started, and I'll just turn it back over to Tara to start us off with some agency updates.
Thanks, Brooke. Starting out with what is probably top of mind for most of us, it is for me. When are we going to get back into the office? I don't know about you, but I'm still finding it hard to believe that we are in year 2 of a global pandemic. Year 2. I know we're all sharing the same sort of fatigue around that, right? Zoom fatigue and mask fatigue and isolation and all the things that go along with this. But I'm grateful for my health. And that always makes me think about those employees, especially in DES, who they have jobs that require them to be in person every day. And they have been every day for the past 2 years. While, I'm feeling Zoom fatigue, they're out there in person working with other people. And I have so much gratitude for all of those employees. I hope that all of you are staying safe and healthy. And when we talk about the rest of us getting back to work personally, on a personal level, I can't wait. I have so many ideas that I keep writing down and putting on the back burner, like many things, waiting for a time when it's safer for us to come together as an agency, 750 people, if I can manage that in a way that's safe, so that we can start connecting better, start getting to know each other better. That's one of my goals this year. So I'm listening really closely to the governor's interagency group that he's bringing together now. Once a week we meet to listen to the facts, right, from a lot of esteemed doctors and medical professionals that are informing the governor's decision on these matters. So it's really helpful to have that level of information on a weekly basis. And I'm sure you're not surprised to know in that group that we're talking all about Omicron, and that is the highest, well, almost 100% of all the cases in the state and across the country are this new variant. We've seen in the recent week, maybe two, that the number of cases is leveling off here on the western side of the state. But what it's doing is moving over to the eastern side now, where it's spiking. So we have obviously more time before we're getting back in the office together. The governor's office has set a March 15 tentative date for a return to the office. That's been pushed back a few times, as you know, and as you can imagine, while they're monitoring this virus. And within DES and our leadership team, we're meeting internally to figure out, what does a hybrid workplace look like for us in DES? Because there certainly are expectations based on this March 15th date that every agency is going to get back into the office to some degree. And in doing that, we're also expected to reduce our office footprint. So most of us will be looking at a hybrid approach. And what I think and expect that to look like, as I'm reading about how other agencies are attempting to do this across the state as well, we're also figuring it out. Nobody has really led that effort, but we're all figuring it out together. I expect that's going to look like some of us maybe having to pack up our desks in the office so that our cubicles and workspaces are more generic in nature, and we're sharing them from one work group to another on alternating days. And all of that has to be coordinated, and we're beginning that work at the leadership team level. And I know Jason Marquis, if you haven't met Jason yet, he is our Chief Operating Officer. He's working together with some of our assistant directors to talk about how we're configuring space in the 1500 building. Jason, if you want to have a few minutes to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, certainly. Good afternoon, everyone. For those of y'all that are new and haven't been introduced to me yet, my name is Jason Marquis. I'm the Chief Operations Officer, your Chief Operations Officer. And real briefly on space planning as it relates to kind of returning to work and what could that look like. We are in the initial phases of looking at, for those staff that currently have space allocated to them at 1500. So for those of you that don't work at 1500, feel free for the next couple minutes to go ahead and just tune me out. But for those that are working at 1500, what we knew our space allocations were going to be pre-pandemic and pre-getting out of the office is not what it's going to look like in the future. I mean, we have to use the last 23, 22 months of experience in terms of how we've been able to work in a more mobile or distributed environment, take the best practices and the best outcomes of that environment, and then apply it to some assumptions we're going to make about the future operating environment. And what does that look like at 1500 for DES? So as we finalize some initial planning guidance that will allow those assistant directors that have staff that work out of 1500, they will then start engaging managers, supervisors, start really asking just a few hard questions. Some of those will be centered around some hard numbers that OFM has asked us to look at. As an example, one of the metrics that we will probably be applying to this and evaluating our staff is a staff member projected to be in the office 3 or more days in the course of a given 5-day work week. That will be one set of criteria that we will look at. And there's some additional numbers that we'll kind of play around with and then ask those divisions to report those back, kind of add it all up together, and then just do basic math, add and subtract based off the allocation of spaces we've got. What are the changes that we are forecasting? And then be able to come back and present something to the broader leadership team about what what could the future of DES space allocation at 1500 Jefferson look like? What space could we start to save and then offer up to other agencies, and then report that back out to OFM once we get into June. So it's an evolving planning process. We're kind of in the initial phases. For those of you that aren't at 1500, it really won't apply to you. For those at 1500, more to follow. But as we're able to kind of finalize the initial planning guidance, it'll start to really gain momentum and traction from there. So certainly, if you have any questions or concerns based off anything I've said or anything you've heard, feel free to jot those down in the chat or in the Q&A, or certainly after the fact, after this, all staff, please feel free to engage your leadership or your assistant directors, and hopefully we'll be able to answer those initial questions or concerns. So Tara, back to you.
Thanks, Jason. And in terms of announcements, the last section here that I want to talk about are a couple of changes that you may have noticed to our LT. And when I say LT, for everybody's sake, that means leadership team. The leadership team is comprised of about 15 assistant director level leaders in this agency who report at this time between Jason Marquis and I. Without the deputy director role, he and I have split direct oversight over all of the divisions and assistant directors. So LT is our leadership team. And I just want to acknowledge that it may seem like a lot of changes right now. And I don't want anyone to think that these changes are happening because there's a new director in town and she's coming in and cleaning house. That is not the case. This house is in really good shape already. All of the changes that you've seen and the leadership team have been for different reasons, and everybody on their own. I am so lucky and fortunate to have really inherited this group of leaders who are supporting me in this work. I'm not here to fix any of their work. I'm here to support the work that they're doing as professionals and support all the work that you're doing through them. So I'm very grateful for all of the contributions. I have a lot of respect for those who have recently left the agency, that being Annette Meyer, who was our deputy director here for 8 years or so in different roles, Bob Covington, who also served for years in DES in different roles, and most recently was assistant director over Capital Security and Visitor Services, CSVS, and Marissa Van Hooser, who is our chief strategy officer over the strategy and performance team. I wish them all well. I hope to stay in touch with them. And I want to take the opportunity to introduce a couple of folks who are stepping up into their respective leadership roles. So first, I would start with Paul Houle. Paul has been in our strategy and performance team for 6 or 7 years. He has big shoes to fill, figuratively speaking, following Marissa's departure. But if anybody has what it takes, is Paul. Paul has advised Fortune 100 companies and leaders over his career, and he brings us an incredible skill set. So I'd like Paul to say a few words of introduction.
Thank you, Tara, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining this afternoon. Again, as Tara mentioned, I'm going on 6 years here at DES. It's been a pleasure to work with many of you and connect with many of you. I'm super honored to represent the strategy and performance team, the S&P team, which is an amazingly capable team of internal consultants with a vast array of skills. Probably most of you have connected with one or more of our group. I came to state service to pay it forward. This is kind of, I feel like, my last stage in my career. I'm a native Washingtonian, so I care a whole lot about our state and our people. So I'm super appreciative to be able to serve in this capacity. Before I came, I held extensive career, as Tara mentioned, supporting large organizations, healthcare organizations in our region, and developing and deploying their strategy and making really dramatic improvements in their operational performance. So it's a nice fit. So I'm really looking forward to bringing some of that experience to this role, and similarly looking forward to connecting and supporting you further. And thank you very much. Shout out to B&G and FPS, where I've been embedded for the last couple of years. Thank you.
And Jason, I know you have a few words to say also to welcome Matt Jones, who has also worked in CSVS for a number of years and is stepping up to fill Bob's role.
Yeah, thank you again, Tara. So certainly many of you that have been in the agency for a while know who Matt Jones is. Obviously, he's a proven performer, leader, and manager in the organization. And based off his demonstrated potential to continue to do great things at CSVS, it was a decision that the director made to appoint Matt into the position so we would not have any gap of coverage leading that small but very capable and high performing team that does so much for the Capitol campus. So certainly I'll give Matt the same opportunity that Paul had to, for those of you that don't know Matt and haven't worked with him over the years, he could say a few brief words. But certainly, Matt, welcome to the team. We know you're up to the challenge. And once again, we wish you the very best of luck. So Matt, turn it over to you real quick.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate your kind words, and also want to extend my thanks to Tara as well. For those that may not know me, I am Matt Jones. I've been with GA and now DES for 15 years now. I came to state service really seeking stability. I worked in the private sector in the IT world, working for companies such as Nike, IBM Global Services, and Frank Russell Company. And I really sought out stability and thought state government and working in the public sector was right for me. And it's proven to be true. I've really enjoyed my state career so far and look forward to leading a wonderful, highly capable team. Capitol Security and Visitor Services does phenomenal work. It's a fun program to work in with inspiring individuals and dedicated employees that have great subject matter expertise in the areas of engagement with the public, civic education, safety, emergency management, and security. And I'm looking forward to continuing to work with our strategic partners and furthering our collaborative and critical relationships to keep things on the campus moving forward in the right direction. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Brooke, Jason, and Tara.
I'll go ahead and jump in. Thank you all. And next we're going to jump into some kudos and meet some other of our DES team members. So Tara, for that, I'm going to hand it back over to you again.
And this is my favorite part of the agenda. So bear with us because I wanted to bring many different aspects of employee recognition to this large group setting. Employee recognition is important, but to me personally, as a leader and just as a human being, appreciation really is what I value most. So I hope that every one of you that's listening right now and took the time out of your day to join into our all staff meeting, I hope all of you really do feel appreciated in your work. We're going to take this time to highlight a few employees in DES because for different reasons, they all faced extraordinary challenges in their everyday work and have really exceeded everybody's expectations over the past year. If you feel though, like I've missed someone and there's recognition and appreciation that needs to be expressed, I would love to hear about that and to know how I can work that into our future staff meetings. So send me an email if that's true. In the meantime, though, I'm going to start with a very special award that 2 employees in this agency have been recognized with. I don't know if all of you have heard of the Governor's Award for Leadership. As the new person here, I was just reading about it and learning really how impressive it is to receive an award like this, because the governor's office scrutinizes nominations for this award process quite harshly. It's not an easy process to go through and actually win an award. So I'm really particularly very proud as DES director to see not 1, but 2 employees recognized by the Governor's Award for Leadership in 2021. So these 2 employees, managers, I could go on and on and on about. I had to really frame my description of the work that they did that led to this award, so that I didn't go on too long. But to summarize it, these 2 individuals were faced with, like everyone, a lot of new things no one had ever done before in the pandemic. And to keep it short and succinct, with their teams, they were responsible for standing up an entirely new operation that had never existed before and sourcing millions of pieces of PPE at a time when, and I remember that time, it was almost impossible to find the PPE that we needed across the globe. So that was a very challenging time in sourcing. And then once you have all of that equipment and PPE, the standing up of the massive 200,000 square foot warehouse building, that is not just warehousing it, but the whole operation around distributing it across not just the state, but many times different partners, not just state agencies, but most often local governments and agencies across the entire state, not just state government itself. It was a huge operation, is my point, and very impressive to have seen. So the work of these 2 managers and their teams is super impressive, and I really am honored to give them this recognition, and I would love for them to say a few words about it and to talk about the teamwork that it took. So I'll start with Mimi Limeroth. Congratulations, Mimi.
Thank you, Tara. I just want to express like how small of a role I played in the success of what DES was able to do in supporting the COVID response efforts. I mean, I'm looking at Jason and all of his team at the SEOC at that time and how they jumped in. And, you know, we also had Damian Bernard at the P&I that jumped in. And I have to applaud the executive team for helping us and supporting us build the infrastructure that it took to stand up the Polaris facility. Seth and the real estate services team just really came in and saved the day multiple times. And I really appreciate the efforts. Mary Jane was always there supporting the team, always asking what extra things that we need to do, George. And so I'm sorry if I definitely missed a ton of people. Dale Richardson, the whole surplus team, everybody had a huge part and a critical role in what we were able to accomplish. And, you know, I have to say that, you know, I have a new admiration for people, FEMA and the people that serve. I mean, all hours of the night, I was getting phone calls and whatnot. And so just knowing that all the efforts and work that they do never stops 24/7. And so I'm honored to have been a part of it and will never forget the experience. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mimi. And also awarded in 2021 with the Governor's Award for Leadership is Elena McGrew. Congrats, Elena.
Thank you so much. It's overwhelming, and I just want to really say that, you know, I think this acknowledgement and recognition belongs to the whole contracts and procurement team. And we had some people that were probably more involved that just jumped in with no questions asked, no concerns, no complaints to what needed to be done, with no notice at all, no procedures, as some of you mentioned, no precedent to what something like this before. Keegan, Kayla, Cindy, Olu, David, Mike, Bart, but those are the people that were, doing some of the maybe the calls and the emails, but there's other folks that behind the scenes that step up to take an additional work, right? So what is, I think, invisible sometimes is the folks that kept our core duties going through these critical times, and they've taken on more workload, again, without questions asked. And I really just want to acknowledge that. Jamie brought an amazing leadership, right, to this, to guide this ship and our team forward. And one thing I do want to add, besides, Mimi's team, as you heard her mention some of the incredible folks on her team, finance, I haven't worked closely with finance team before, just huge kudos. You guys received a flood of P-card transactions and a flood of new vendor registrations, Whitney Banish, just an incredible group of people, and Robin Herring, our safety officer, who again just stepped up to do the inspection. So as you guys can hear from Mimi and what I'm sharing, there's a lot of folks that were hands-on throughout this process. And I guess the takeaway message from me through this whole thing is we have incredible knowledge here in DES, incredible skills, expertise, and attitude, I think most and foremost, that we can continue to do amazing things together for the state, and not just in these sort of emergency situations, but just overall. So just thank you, everybody, and let's keep going.
Thank you, Elena. And I so appreciate both of them. When I wanted to recognize them in different ways, they were so gracious about all of the many people that it took to support this massive operation. I think you heard from both of them just a portion of everybody's work that went into this. And Elena, I so appreciate your perspective that, well, there was also a whole group of employees who might not have been supporting it directly, but were doing all of the other work that was not getting done while this huge operation was supported. So I appreciate both of you so much. And also, Mimi, your recognition of the executive team is really wonderful. That doesn't happen a whole lot. And I want to take a moment to recognize Seth also, because I learned so much about when this operation started. We didn't have this very grand, perfectly placed and situated warehouse to begin with. All of these millions of pieces of equipment and PPE were coming into tiny existing warehouses that we already had leased that had to eventually be spread out into 2 different locations. And that was just a logistical nightmare. So the work that Seth Wallace did with his real estate team was really important in making that whole program a success. So I appreciate you acknowledging the leadership team as well in that work. So congratulations to both of you. Everything we do in DES really involves a team. And that is true both within our agency and across state agencies. We're always either supporting or working lockstep and barrel with another agency. I want to take a moment here, and I'll ask Jason to bring on a few other folks to talk about the teamwork and some recognition that is really deserved in different areas of the department. So I'll leave it to Jason to focus on this next section.
Yeah, thank you again, Tara. So now that our host is getting some of our additional leadership team members brought up on the screen, before I transition to that, I do want to just extend, because Mimi kind of hit on it. I got to see firsthand the impacts and results of both Mimi and Elena's work while I was at the military department inside the emergency management division. And I had the opportunity to testify last year at a work session when I could have spent a whole bunch of time talking about the National Guard and all the great things DOH was doing and all the great things that the EOC was doing. But I had to make sure that the legislators on that call knew that all of the work that was not getting broadcast statewide and across the legislators that was coming out of DES at the time. And you got to remember, this is late winter, spring of 2021. All of that great work saved lives. Ultimately, all of that work was designed to do certain things during this pandemic. And it's a cascading effect of actions taken across this agency that pull a lot of those individual pieces together, that without those pieces falling into place, none of that PPE mission would have been a success. So both, I'm appreciative of the fact that Mimi and Elena are obviously very humble leaders in our organization, but at the same time, I think we all know and recognize that with a complex mission like this, it requires excellence up and down, from staff all the way up to mid-level and senior leadership to get things done and to identify and solve complex problems and bring them to a positive solution. So to the extended teams that supported the actual response, directly or indirectly, just my personal sincere thank you. And the recognition of Mimi and Elena as leaders is a representation of all of the things that were going on in those respective teams. So Mimi and Elena, thank you. So getting transitioned out of that, there's a lot of great work that goes on no matter what time of the year it is in DES. And that was on full display. Coming from the emergency management side, we didn't look at things in terms of months. We looked at them in what emergency season is it? Is it flood season? Is it fire season? We just came out of and are still on the tail end of our winter weather season. So the pictures say 1,000 words, but what you don't see is the actions and activities that are going on behind the scenes. And a lot of that was the pictures you see are Capitol Campus, but I'm gonna ask Mary Jane to comment on some of the things that maybe you didn't see that were going on during the snowstorm and some of the activities on the business resources division side of the house, like mail and printing that were still going on no matter how much snow fell and how clear the roads were. So here in a second, I'm going to leave it up to the two ADs that have great teams that just continue to knock the ball out of the ballpark during not only the snow that we experienced over the last, month or so, but also the subsequent periodic flooding that we also experienced. So with that, I want to go ahead and turn it over to Mary Jane first. And then Mary Jane, if you would be so kind, when you're complete, if you could transition over to George.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jason, and thank you, Tara, for this this platform to be able to share some of the stories about the work that the BRD team did during our snow week in December. So yeah, we had our people were on site, our staff were on site, as they always are, and were available and ready to provide services to our customers and to the citizens of the state. I'd like to start with surplus operations. At the time, Dale Richardson was in an interim role as we were recruiting and looking for our new program manager. And during the week of December 27th, he and the entire surplus team were able to get 137 auctions listed for our customers. We had 4 truckloads, semi-truckloads of furniture that were delivered to us for processing. And we had a total of 53 auctions for just over $42,000 that were picked up by customers. Customers that otherwise would not have been able to have received their products if we had not been opened. So it was a slower week than what's normal for us, but we definitely were able to meet our agency customers and our private sector customers' expectations with the team that was there. Really appreciated everybody's support in coming in and making sure that we could continue operations. Fleet operations started their work under Courtney Spear. She's here today representing the entire fleet operations team as the program manager for fleet and parking services. And they began the work prior to the snowstorm coming in, knowing that we had inclement weather. They went above and beyond to make sure that we had all-wheel drive vehicles and 4x4 vehicles that were available for agencies to be able to pick up at the ready or at a moment's notice to be able to continue agency operations. I know that Fleet provided 4 all-wheel drive SUVs to Consolidated Mail Services for mail delivery. A couple of our vehicles went to the Department of Veterans Affairs, and we also provided trucks to Buildings and Grounds to help support the maintenance on the Capitol campus during that week. And for print and mail, Damian Bernard is here as the program manager for print and mail to represent the work that those team members did. We have service level agreements with our customers, and you know we have a lot of mail and a lot of printed documents that are mandated to get into the USPS hands by a certain kind of time frame. So those deliveries are really critical for us to do, and the team stepped up during the week of December 27th. We printed more than 1.6 million images. We metered more than 40,000 pieces of mail and inserted into those 830,000 pieces into envelopes. So they shipped a total of 204 jobs, fulfilled 123 orders, and we're servicing 16 mail routes, which included 657 locations in 51 cities and 10 counties across the state during that week. So again, just really appreciate this team and all of the business resources teams and all of the work that they do to support our agencies and our customers every single day. Thank you. And George, I'll pass it over to you.
We would have a round of applause for BRD, everybody on your own computer. Thank you, Mary Jane, and nice work, BRD.
Yeah, thanks, Mary Jane, and kudos to your team, and also kudos to Mimi and Elena. I had a chance to work with them through the pandemic and PPE response for that. So great job by them. So thank you, Tara and Jason, and appreciate the opportunity to highlight a few of our team members today and some of the work that happened within B&G. So for all that don't know me, my name is George Carter. I'm the Assistant Director for the Buildings and Grounds Division. If you've not heard about or are new to B&G or new to this agency and have not heard about B&G, we oversee the daily facility and lease operations for buildings located on the Capitol campus, in addition to facilities in Seattle, Yakima, and Kelso. As many of you know, and Mary Jane touched on it, we experienced some pretty dramatic weather events over the last month. So we had, I'm just going to count through it, snow, ice, multi-day freezing event where we didn't, get above 32 degrees late December. That was followed up by historic rainfall, river flooding that led to Capitol Lake flooding, which also led to leaks and flooding within buildings across campus. And then that, in addition, we had the heavy rains caused a landslide along our Powerhouse Road. And as was mentioned earlier by Tara, that was during ongoing pandemic and an uptick in the new variant. I will say, fortunately, we have a great team here at B&G and have developed plans over the years to address situations like these. So I just want to take this opportunity to recognize some of the efforts that happen within our programs, and also highlight a few of our folks that you see on the screen here as well. So just going to walk through a few quick items. So we had our support services custodial team who spread de-icer and shoveled entryways in facilities across campus. They provided condition updates real time from the field so we can inform our communications. They braved the icy conditions to arrive for their scheduled shifts. And for those who don't know, as everyone else was heading home as it was getting colder at 4 in the afternoon, our custodial team was coming in to make sure our buildings were clean and sanitized for session, which was starting in a few weeks after the event. We already had folks on campus. We had our maintenance and repairs operations who mitigated flooding around campus, one of which was a pretty substantial flood at our archives building. We were a few inches away from some pretty significant documents in that building. So they were able to set up pumps, monitor the situation 24 hours a day with assistance from our custodial team. Just a quick kudos to Ken, Curtis, Paul, and Derek, who helped with that specific flood. We had our HVAC team that was monitoring buildings and addressing issues and concerns brought up during the events. Our electrician team worked to turn power off during or in critical areas impacted by floodwaters, and then completed repairs to restore power after. Specific area was around Capitol Lake, if anyone saw that. And then our powerhouse team who monitored lake levels and adjusted to compensate for the various river flows that I think everyone heard about or got alerts on their phones throughout the flood event. And then we had our facility operations team who relay condition updates to tenant agencies. So very important to make sure that message is getting out, and then are following up on after incident action items. So I only covered a handful of items. There was a lot more that happened. We had dozens and dozens of other team members who participated, but I just want to take the next part to highlight a few of the folks that you see on the screen here. So from our grounds program, we have our supervisor team members there. So we have Mary Harrison, Kevin Batten, and Dan Kirshner. So I just highlight a few of the great work that they did, or a few items of the great work they did through the snow event. They arrived early to campus. So some folks were on site on campus at 3 a.m. in the morning to ensure that, as you can see from behind me in my screensaver, the walkways were clear across campus. They operated equipment for snow removal on pathways and sidewalks. Again, helped with providing real-time condition updates so that we can inform the communications that went out via communications in our leadership team. In some cases, picked up staff from their home who weren't able to get out of their homes or neighborhood driveways or neighborhoods. And then also repaired equipment during the event. So in sub-freezing conditions out there fixing, some of our grounds equipment. During the flooding event, they prepped and staged sandbags, led work to place them per our flood mitigation plan, closed trails around the lake for public safety, probably saw barricades and some of the caution tape that has been placed out there and working to get that cleaned up. Collaborated with Kyle Busted and our DES Emergency Management Division in the city of Olympia. And then they are continuing the ongoing removal of logs and debris that washed out from Capitol Lake and the trails around Capitol Lake. So just want to say a quick thank you to Kevin, Mary, and Dan. Appreciate all the work that you and your teams did. Great leadership there. On our supply and procurement team, we have Bob Hall and Devon Rivers. So some were over at B&G. They really are some of the key folks who support getting supplies and materials out to the teams who are either doing construction projects or during events like this. So they were busy booking reservations for snow removal equipment and getting us in before some of the other organizations who were trying to book it before us to ensure we had the right equipment to do the jobs here. And then continuing to adjust based on weather conditions throughout the events. And then they supported day-to-day orders from teams, again, across B&G. This was amid our ongoing global supply chain issues. So I know most people have probably been affected by that. No different here at B&G. They spend a lot of time sourcing materials and equipment to make sure teams have what they need. And then daily coordination with our internal B&G programs to ensure they were ordering the right supplies and equipment to make sure standard operations function as needed, but also in our snow and weather event response plans that teams have the right equipment and the right resources. So just want to again say thank you to all the folks on the team here from the B&G team. Appreciate all the work you guys did. Again, Tara, Jason, thanks for the opportunity to highlight some of them. And if you obviously see anyone around campus, feel free to say hello to them. They're out there, throughout the year and in all weather conditions. So just appreciate the opportunity and thank you all.
George, I just want to briefly say how much I appreciate this group. Like Mary Jane's description in BRD, people take for granted when we're working remotely in the warmth of our homes, that somebody's still got to deliver that mail to the recipient. I want us to always connect to what's on the other end of the work that we do, right? There are people receiving their checks on time because our employees were getting to work no matter what the conditions to deliver that mail. And in your case, the work is a lot more visible, right? If you're on campus than it is for the mail delivery, but nonetheless, very much underappreciated. I mean, I was getting daily updates about how one snow removal truck would die and then the next one would die. And I was getting nervous that we weren't going to have the equipment we needed. But before you know it, the next update is, all right, our guys were able to source the right equipment to get this done right. And that's no easy feat in a state that's covered in snow and everybody's trying to get the same equipment. So certainly a lot of credit is due to you and your entire team. And I'm so grateful for it.
George, do you want to go ahead and introduce the video we're about to play?
Yeah, I'd love to. So we had one of our team members here at BG developed a video, Ken Carlson, that we showed in one of our team meetings here within BNG. And we're going to show it here, just highlight some of the work that's happened over the last year for various BNG teams. And you'll, yeah, it's a really cool video. So hope everyone enjoys it.
Okay, and next we're going to move into the State Service Awards. And so Tara, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Brooke. I was trying to unmute because sometimes the space button works and sometimes it doesn't. So sorry about that. First of all, I just have to say before I start, I love that video. Whoever has the skills to put that together is really, really, really good. I would love to procure your skills to do more of those videos across the agency because it really puts things in perspective. That's only probably 10% of everything that particular work group really did. But it's fun to see it like that back to back set to some fun music. So thank you for putting that together and indulging me to share it with all of you because I thought it was fantastic. This next and yeah, this is the last section of the kudos part of our agenda, is to recognize those employees who have reached a milestone in their public service to the state of Washington. This was over the last quarter of 2021. And whenever I think about public service, there's a certain quote that I love because I'm a big fan of Eleanor Roosevelt. And Eleanor Roosevelt's quote on public service is that for our own success to be real, it must contribute to the success of others. There's a lot of variations of that by other important figures, but that one is so simple and real for me. That's why I love being a public servant because I'm always trying to check in with myself, especially when things get tough, to remind myself why I'm doing the work that I'm doing. It's not the easiest work. It has its parameters and limitations when you're working for the public good and with public tax dollars, but it's worthwhile and it does contribute to the success of others. So as I read your name here, every one of you dedicated public servants, I hope that you're able to recognize the same and how important your work is to the contribution of the good of others. If you just take a moment to think about it, it helps. So you take it for granted, but you're a public servant and that's important. So as I read your name, take a moment to think about that. I'm going to go in order of years. So starting with those who have achieved 5 years of service with the state of Washington, I want to congratulate the following people: Brian Donner and BNG. BNG, I'm going to take a minute to explain so everybody knows what our acronyms are. BNG is Building and Grounds, and you just saw them highlighted in that video as an example. Congrats, Brian. Cindy Garrett Anderson in our WSD division. WSD is Workforce Support and Development. Congrats. Alexandra Kosick in Communications. Eugene Kulev in Finance. Jason Marquis, our very own Chief Operating Officer. Ernesto Silva in BRD. BRD is Business Resources Division. You saw them also just highlighted in the prior section. And Stacia Wasmont in CNP. CNP being Contracts and Procurement. Congrats everyone for 5 years of service with the state. And with 10 years of service to the state is Linda Kent in Communications. Congrats, Linda. With 15 years of service, we have Randy Gibbons in WSD, Matt Jones in CSVS, CSVS being Capital Services and Capital Security, and Visitor Services. I'm still getting all the acronyms right myself. Matt Jones you saw earlier as an introduction. Lori Manier in BRD, congrats. James Mitchell and Laura Nolting in ETS. ETS is our Enterprise Technology Solutions Division. Chet Sandstrom and Ash Venable and BNG, congrats for 15 years. And Jason Seams in ERM. ERM is Enterprise Risk Management. There's so many things that DES does. I want to take the opportunity to just highlight them as we go. So thank you for bearing with me through the list. Jason is Assistant Director in Risk Management. So congrats everyone for 15 years. With 20 years of service to the state of Washington, we have Diane Wilkinson and BRD and Jubel Hebert and BRD. We have Dan Kirshner with BNG. You saw him earlier on screen also, and Corey Knopfinger with BNG. And we have Rachel Stitch with WSD. Congratulations everyone for 20 years of service. And with 25 years of service, we have Wes Klein and BNG, Fung Lai and BNG, Stephanie Fuller and RES. RES is our Real Estate Services Division. Rachel Holder in HR, and Teresa Reuter in CNP. Congrats for 25 years of service. And finally, with 30 years of service to the state of Washington, we have Krista Broxma in CNP and Daryl Dameron and Lynn McGuire in Finance, who both have 30 years of service with the state of Washington. So please congratulate them. I wish that I could present these awards to you in person the way I normally would, but I did my best here to make sure that you feel appreciated here on Zoom.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and move us along in our agenda today. We've got some great things happening and some great things with some great team members. And so thank you everyone for appearing with us today. We're going to learn now how a couple of our divisions are embedding inclusion into their everyday work. And we're going to be inviting a few people up here again to join us on screen. And Tara, would you like to start us off with that?
Yes, thank you, Brooke. So this section of the agenda is, well, I was going to say new, but actually this whole all staff meeting process is pretty new, I think, for all of us. On that subject, I appreciate so much all the work that's gone into putting this together, because I think this gathering of the entire agency is really important. And like I told you before, I plan on doing this every quarter. And this section of the agenda is specifically dedicated to what we've heard from all of you. In the employee engagement survey, not the one you just took, because we're still waiting on those results, but in the first employee engagement survey results that I saw as director when I got here 4 months ago, that would be, I think, 2020 results. There were a few questions that were underperforming. I did mention that in a recent email message, but one of them really stuck with me, and that was about inclusion and how we embed inclusion in our everyday work here in DES. That was the single lowest score that we had as an agency from all of you who took the time to do the survey. So I took some time to think about, what does inclusion mean? And how do I want that to be more tangible here in the agency? So we talk a lot about DEI. You've probably heard DEI every single day that you've worked in DES, because it really is a part of the culture that we're creating. DEI meaning diversity, equity, and inclusion. So inclusion can mean a lot of things when you look at it from a workplace setting. The inclusion that I hope to bring to DES as a director is one that would create a sense of true belonging for each of you. And for me too, for that matter. I'm still creating and finding my sense of belonging here as a new director, where we're all thriving and doing and being the best possible version of our public servant self that we can be, where our perspectives are valued, and you see that in, if not everyday life in your work setting, but you see it regularly incorporated into your work. So I posed a question to all of our leadership team. I asked everybody to think about and give me examples, because everybody's operation is different. Some of them are in person, some of them are remote, and they all have different objectives every day to get their work done. So I asked them to give me examples of what inclusion looks like in their workday. How are they embedding inclusion into their everyday work, so that I could see how it's happening, or see where it's not happening and where we need to focus on it a little bit more. And I was really, really pleased and impressed with the responses that I got. And I wanted to highlight them here, both as a way to tell our stories and attempt to connect as much as we can across the virtual reality of Zoom anyway, to tell our stories about what our workday is like and how we're inclusive of others, and to give all of you some practical tools also and examples of how you could do the same in your work setting. So Christine Scarlett was the first to respond to me. Christine is our Director of Human Resources. So I asked her to come on to the agenda and introduce her staff and how they have practiced inclusion in different ways across their agency. Christine.
Thanks, Tara, and welcome everybody. Thanks for being here with us. As Tara mentioned, I lead the human resources team of about 22 professionals. I always call them the most fantastic HR team I've ever led. And two of them are here with me today. And I want to introduce Ashley Huff, who does for leave and accommodation. She's the administrator for all employee leave and accommodation. And Steve Kimmerer, who's one of our talent acquisition consultants. And for you, that's our recruiter. We use fancy titles when it comes to HR. And internally in HR, we created called a transformation team that is made up of volunteers from our HR group. And these two individuals are members of that transformation team. And this transformation team in HR ensures, I'm intentionally not a part of it because I want it to be employee driven. And they ensure that we follow all the important pieces of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that it's embedded in our HR work. And so these two are here to talk about what we do in HR to ensure that we are creating an equitable environment. And I'll take it back to Tara.
Good, thank you. So I have Steve Kammerer and Ashley Huff. And so I'll let I have a few questions for both of you to help describe what this looks like in your everyday work in HR. And I'll leave it to the two of you to figure out who's going to respond to what. But my few basic questions are basically just to describe what are some of the ways, the examples that you've given that your division embeds inclusion in your everyday work.
So I'll go first, Steve. One of the ways is actually what we are showing right now. It's and I have to give all the credit to Ty and Masozi in our group because they, well, specifically Masozi, she's involved in global diversity volunteer work, and she references the global diversity calendar as part of that work and uses that calendar to guide Zoom backgrounds, which provides a platform for us to be cognizant of what's going on in terms of various communities that we connect with. And I'll just say really shortly, we also have a book club. That book club is made up of individuals who want to get together in our HR team and discuss current topics and other diversity topics together in a really safe environment where we can explore kind of where we're at in our process. So Steve?
Sure. Yeah, and I have the inclusionary background as well, highlighting Mahayana Buddhist New Year, which is a little bit different than what we celebrate here. It's more of a religious holiday, spending the evening worshiping, praying, meditating. But then the comment I wanted to make is that these diversity-driven Zoom backgrounds, they're purposeful and they're also timely. They provide a public platform that allows individuals in the community to know they're in a safe space. They spark meaningful conversations with others, and also they display advocacy and allyship. So it's, Tara, as you said, it's an inclusionary embed that's easy to do, and you get a lot of mileage out of it.
Yeah, I have to agree with that, Steve, because I myself have been in meetings with different HRBPs, and I'm always fascinated by the backgrounds, and I've learned quite a few things actually, and just in being in meetings with your different team members. So I'm curious from the two of you, how this practice using the Zoom backgrounds, and I heard you talk about a book club, Ashley. I think I've heard about that book club. It's kind of like people are talking about it. I love that idea. It gives something people a common ground to talk about and to connect. So those are great examples. And I wonder if you could tell me, how has it been received by your team members? How big is your group, first of all, and how has it been received by them?
Well, our full HR group is about 22 people, and it's really who has the capacity and desire to be on the book club. And so we range anywhere from, I think, 5 to 9-ish, 10-ish people in the book club. And we do them quarterly. We try to do them quarterly, especially with some of the COVID stuff taking up our time. We've had to skip a quarter here and there, but we really try and get to it every quarter. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. And Steve, I wonder if you could describe any challenges that you faced in trying to embed this work across the agency or across your work unit in the agency.
I think the thing that comes top of mind to me is that there's a feeling out of each other. Speaking now of the book club, of getting to know each other on a different level than you know each other on a day-to-day basis. You're being much more vulnerable. You're talking about things that you don't usually talk about in the workplace. And so there's a meandering period there where there may be some different disagreements. But coming out in the end, I can say for myself that it's the single most beneficial activity I've done since state government. It's getting to know each other on that sort of level and deepen that relationship is just so important.
Agreed. I couldn't agree more. Those are great examples. I thank you both so much for coming on screen and being a part of our staff meeting to talk about these examples. Thank you both so much, Ashley and Steve, and Christine too. I'm gonna move over to another example. This just happened. Cindy and Christine both gave me answers to my question about inclusion pretty quickly and back to back, and they were both just such great examples. Cindy Garrett-Anderson is Assistant Director over Workforce Support and Development. If you recall me mentioning her earlier, you could say congrats to Cindy for her 5 years. And Cindy also has a couple of folks on her team that she's invited to talk about inclusion.
Tara, about 5 years ago, Workforce Support and Development Division started a deliberate effort to infuse equity and inclusion within our team and then throughout our services as well. We kicked this off. It was an initiative that started with a 2-day division-wide training on cultural competence and cultural humility. And then out of that training, we developed our WSD equity team made up of volunteers, including Elizabeth and Joanne. And we have volunteers from across our program. So we have 9 or 10 folks serving on our equity team. That team, which I'm a part of as well, is committed to the intentional work and the deeply meaningful work, I think, for all of us who are part of that team to build inclusion, not just in our own division, but then also in the work that we do with workforce support and development to help support our efforts to foster diversity, equity, and inclusion across the state workforce and throughout our services. So I'd like to invite our 2 founding co-chairs of the equity team, Joanne Lee and Elizabeth Fontanella, to share just a couple of ways we've built inclusion in our division. So Tara, I'll send it back to you for the questions. Thanks.
Great. Hi, Joanne and Elizabeth, welcome. I have similar questions, obviously, to try to understand what are the examples. If you could, one or both of you, describe some of the examples of inclusion that you embed into your everyday work in WSD.
Thanks, Tara. And again, thanks, Cindy. So again, my name is Joanne Lee and I use she and her pronouns. So I have served as a co-chair with Elizabeth in our equity team. And we launched a monthly coffee talk about 2 years ago, right after when COVID hit and everyone was at home. To work from home, and we wanted to have an opportunity to connect with our team members. So the coffee talks are designed not only to help increase our cultural humility and inclusion within our division, but we wanted to create these gatherings as a brave space for us to tell our stories, to celebrate diversity, bring our whole selves to work, right? And then we also provided opportunity to listen deeply to one another and share how we may be feeling when it comes to race and equity experiences. We also hold this space to explore what's visible and invisible about our identities and build allyship and just share resources with one another, considering that we were all working from home and wanted to connect with one another.
And just a quick follow-up, Joanne, I'm sorry, because I've heard the word allyship a couple times. And I wonder if you could take a moment to just describe what that means. It's a term that is relatively new to me, and I'd be happy if you could explain it to everybody who's listening.
Yeah, thank you. There may be a certain definition that you will probably see off the internet or what allyship means, right? But from my perspective, from my where I'm coming from as an immigrant, a person of color, allyship really means to me as someone who I can confide and share my most vulnerable and information with that can help me continue to grow as an individual. That can also value my perspective and my thoughts and my ideas, though they may be different from theirs, and also help me elevate my voice into the room. There's a lot of the ally that I have from my leaders and my colleagues. As again, as a person of color, I look for those allies to be able to help create a space for me to be able to voice my thoughts and ideas the same way we're doing now. So I appreciate that space. And I know my co-equity chair here will be able to share a little bit more about that. Thanks, Tara.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
Yeah, I just wanted to share about another activity that we've been doing this month. So the month of January, we took on the WSD 21-Day Equity Challenge. So what that is a voluntary commitment to devote at least 10 to 15 minutes a day for 21 days to create a new habit. It's a habit to learn, and specifically this month we're learning about the foundations of racism and then the different ways that bias, privilege, oppression, and trauma show up in our everyday lives. Allyship is one of the topics that we are learning about as well. So we're using resources provided by the City of Tumwater. So we might be watching a video or reading an article. And then we've used a personal reflection log and weekly discussions where we come together to talk about what we've been learning and also how we may have been impacted emotionally by what we're learning. So yeah, thanks.
I appreciate that so much. You're creating so many opportunities for your teams to come together and connect. I think that's so important. Could you also, just to give me a scale of magnitude, describe how big is your unit in WSD and how has this work been received by everybody?
So we have a total of 40 team members across our division. And for the coffee talks, as far as how they have been received, so we actually had sent out a survey just a couple of months ago in November, and majority of our participants or our team members have completed that. And so one of the questions in our survey was, what do you like best about the coffee talks? And a couple of things here that I'm just gonna read to you as a quote by participants is that I enjoy the relaxed time for sharing story, learning about my coworkers, love getting to know my teammates, love the risk people have taken, the sincerity, authenticity, love the safety created in this space. The chance to interact on an informal level and learn about each other, the support, honesty, vulnerability of those that are sharing support other lived experiences. So we have a lot more feedback from our team members who completed the survey. And one last note here is just, learning more about our coworkers and getting to know them in a different level. So an opportunity for them to connect again.
Good. That's really fantastic. And I hope that we've offered these tools for folks across the agency to think about using and embedding in their everyday work. This is an area of our all staff agenda that I plan to continue because I received quite a few examples from our leadership team across the agency and different operations. So I'm excited to bring those to you in future meetings. And if you have other examples, please share them in the chat, share them with me directly by email. I'm really always interested in embracing this topic of inclusion. So thank you so much, Cindy, Joanne, and Elizabeth.
Thank you. We'll share.
Thank you.
Hey, so we are right up at about 15 minutes left in our meeting today as well, and we're jumping right into the question and answer session. And I know that we're going to have some, all of the members of leadership team join us here on screen who are available to be here today. We have a couple of different ways people could ask questions. We've had some that were submitted early on through a link that we provided in the all staff email yesterday. And so I think we'll start with that. And then I see a few posts here in the Q&A that we'll try to get to as many of them as we can, but I know that we'll also try to do what we did the last time we had one of these sessions and provide answers, written responses as well afterwards. So I'm going to pull up some questions and I'm just going to start reading them off. And Tara, I'll let you guide the conversation if there's someone else who you feel should respond. There were actually several pandemic related questions and many of them overlapped. So we sort of pulled those into singular questions to not have the repetition. And the first question, the CDC has released guidance that says employees who test positive for COVID-19 can return to work after 5 days. My doctor says the same thing. Why does the state still require 10 days? And can we receive updated and standard guidelines for how DES is handling this?
Yeah, I'm going to practice inclusion by making sure that I'm involving my leadership team in our question and answer session. I've depended a great deal on Jason as our COO, who's overseeing the operations in the pandemic recovery team. And we've talked about this. I know the guidelines are changing. And we're just waiting for that information. But I'd ask Jason to answer that question and the others that might pertain to our recovery process from this pandemic.
And Tara, I was in the middle of actually typing up one of the Q&A answers. So I honestly, Brooke, did not hear the full question. I was in full type mode.
No problem. Let's see. The CDC has released guidance that says employees who test positive for COVID can return to work after 5 days. This person's doctor said the same thing. So why does the state still require 10 days? And can we receive updated and standard guidance for how DES is handling it?
Yeah, I guess the short answer is as soon as we get updated guidance as a state agency, then certainly we can update our pandemic recovery plan and guidance to the rest of the agency. But until we get clear changes from the state enterprise, specifically coming out of OFM, then certainly we cannot get out ahead of any changes that are pending. We don't own the state enterprise policy. We are responsive to that. So as soon as that changes, then we will update ours appropriately.
Yeah, I've heard that same question from other cabinet level agency directors, and we're all just waiting for that guidance to come out very, very soon.
Okay, there are a couple of other pandemic related questions here that we'll go to, but I'm aware of the time. And so I want to make sure we get to everything that we can. This one, there seems to be no clear direction. If we're exposed to a person who has COVID-19, it seems to depend on who you talk to or which agency you work for. If you've been around someone who was positive and you take an at-home test and get a negative result, can you come back to work?
Jason, I think I saw that same question earlier and asked you to verify some of the facts around that answer. Were you able to do that?
So let me go back through my notes. Once again, trying to go back and answer, type in Q&A. So somebody just please tell me which direction you want me to focus on. Give me one moment, please.
Yeah, we received probably more questions than we're able with time left to answer. So I think we started at the top to answer as many as we could, right, Brooke? In person while we have everybody here. Lots of people might have the same questions. And then we'll do that as long as we can until time runs out. And whatever we didn't get to answer here live with you, we'll definitely do following our meeting in writing. So we do need to have those answers in writing eventually as well, Jason. Thank you for working on that.
Yeah, and we've got them. And I just needed to pull up a different document that has been generated throughout the last 24 hours. So once again, and it sounds like a canned response, but unfortunately it is. We are responsive to the state enterprise plan, in this case, the roadmap to recovery. it's not only DES, it's every state agency has to follow it. Employees that have had close contact or been exposed to someone with COVID, certainly are not required to quarantine if they meet a couple criteria. So one, they are fully vaccinated. And in this case, it's 2-dose vaccine, you've had 2 doses, or if it's the J&J, you've had the single dose, or you have not had symptoms since the current COVID-19 exposure. So there is no requirement to get tested or to quarantine if you meet those 2 previous established criteria. Caveat, however, certainly it's at your discretion to do a PCR test, do a home antigen test, but we, of course, want you to use your best judgment and certainly take advantage of those free testing opportunities that are out there, either the antigen testing, kits that are available for you to have access to, or the PCR testing, depending on which testing site is closest to you. So hopefully that answers the question. If not, certainly we can follow up.
I'd also Kyle put out some additional information in the chat.
And Jason, can I add one additional item as well?
Feel free.
All right, so I know we've had, at least within BG and several of the other on-site locations, we've really been working closely with HR, because really every situation has been different. If there are people within the home or a close relative or someone visiting. So I would just strongly, encourage or recommend too, that as things happen, that's typically the standard process is for us as ADs or program managers to connect directly with HR and then work with them to assess the situation and work through the next steps. So that's, the process that we at B&G have been using. I don't know if Mary Jane, that's similar, but I would anticipate it probably is for BRD and others on site. Just because it is so, each case, at least that I've seen over the last 5-6 months, is so unique that we really rely on HR for their guidance.
Okay, I'm gonna move us along to the next question. I'm gonna jump out of the pandemic recovery questioning for a minute. And we have a question that came in about parking. What is the status on the parking wait list for under 1500 Jefferson Building now that most people are working from home?
That's a good question. I'm asking, do I see Mary Jane? Yes. Mary Jane,
Yes.
who oversees parking across campus. I'd like her to answer that question.
Yeah, thank you. So the waiting list for the Jefferson Garage, as well as other lots and garages around the campus that have waiting lists, have not had any movement in those lists since March of 2020, when COVID began and staff were sent home and began telecommuting. Currently, the parking team has been working in collaboration with our ETS division to make a few minor changes to the parking system. Once those changes have been made, there will be a communication that will go out to parkers, those who have canceled their parking, asking them to update their parker record. So for those who have canceled parking, we just don't know what movement they may have had. They may have moved off campus. They may no longer be employed by the state. There could be a lot of movement that we're just unaware of. So parkers are going to be asked to verify and update their current parking status and any associated wait lists that they have, which would also include Jefferson. Once those records are updated and we have more information on the return to work plans for the tenants within the Jefferson Building, that wait list for the Jefferson Garage will begin moving once again. So we will be using both the DES website, our intranet site, our internal intranet site, as well as our website and Gov Delivery to be communicating with parkers. So we really would encourage parkers to be sure that they're signed up to receive notifications through Gov Delivery.
Thank you, Mary Jane. And I think I saw a question earlier in the Q&A section of the chat that was similar, asking whether our efforts to reconfigure the office space at 1500 Jefferson to work in a hybrid environment, if that would include parking considerations. And I think it has to, right? Just to answer that question also, that makes a ton of sense. And we'll be looking at that as well at the same time.
Okay, I'm gonna jump to the next question here. Will custodians be getting a meaningful salary raise for the rising cost of living?
I think the answer to that is yes. I certainly support salary raises. And I'm not sure whether I am kicking this question to budget or to George. What do you think, Lynn?
I can tell you that we did receive a response from Ashley in finance that might be
Okay.
helpful. I can read that response if we want to start with that. Yeah, Lynn, okay.
Yes.
The governor's proposed budget includes a general cost of living adjustment of 3.25% for most employees. The governor's proposal also includes additional increases for select job classifications. Additional increases for the custodian 4 and custodian 5 classifications are included in the governor's proposal. The additional increases for the 2 classifications is 2.5% and 5% respectively. If the governor's proposal is included in the enacted 22 supplemental budget, the custodian 4 classification will receive an increase of 5.75%, and the custodian 5 will receive an increase of 8.25%. Now we're not to that point in the budget process now, and so I'd like to turn that over to Lynn to see if you have any clarifications. There was a lot of numbers there.
Yeah, the good news is there are, the governor has proposed salary increases, those that you just read off, and we can get that information out to people in more detail. And now the legislature is considering the governor's budget request during legislative session. So we'll know more in a couple of months about what is adopted in the budget.
Thank you. Yeah, I was pleased to see the governor propose these increases in his own budget, and I really hope to see the legislature approve those increases in addition to the 3.25%.
So we had a final question that I wanted to end with here. We just have 4 minutes left. And this question is probably, Tara, directly to you. It comes in: as a newer employee, I would like to learn our culture, which is of course more challenging with remote work. I'm interested to hear agency leadership thoughts on our organizational culture.
I love that question. Thank you, because I've been thinking about this a lot. As a new director and a new year, this has been on my mind, and I would love, I'm sorry we don't have more than a couple of minutes to talk about it, but we will be talking about it more. And I could point you to our strategic framework, which I have now as a one-pager that highlights our mission, vision, values, and strategic drivers, but that doesn't necessarily create a culture in an organization, does it? What I hope to create instead is, and I've said it several times in this meeting, a culture of connection, connecting not just to each other, but to the work that we're doing. And not just the work that I'm doing in this division, but the work that we're all doing in this one agency, to connect to our customers and to connect to how we're impacting our community. These are all ways that I'm committing to focus on. Everything that I say and do for and about this agency is going to come from that place of connecting us as one. And I think everything else will follow from that. Our stability, our sustainability, our customer service will all follow from that sense of belonging that we will have with each other. So that's my commitment, to work on this culture of connection. And I'd love to talk more about that. If anybody wants, email me about it. And are we ready to close, Brooke?
We are, yes. 1 minute, yes.
1 minute, and in my 1 minute left, I'd like to ask Niket Kelcher and John Pretty to please turn on their cameras so that the rest of us can.
Oh boy.
I hear Niket, but I don't see you.
It's not letting me turn on my video.
Not
How
letting you.
convenient is
Oh,
that?
sure.
Yay.
The first technical problem we've had in the last hour and a half. There she is. Good. I just want to congratulate you, Brooke, Niket and John Pretty, all of you from communications, to thank you so much for all of the talk about behind the scenes work that doesn't get recognized. We just saw that in the last 90 minutes. You all have pulled this off so flawlessly. I thank you for all the hard work to make this a meaningful space for us to connect in. Great job.
Thank you very much.
And I think that concludes our all staff meeting at 2:30 p.m. on the dot. I'm getting better at being on time and so excited to see and connect with all of you in 2022. So I hope you have a beautiful day. Bye, DES.